How's it going, folks? B-Quail's back here with another league race video. This is round 2. We're here at Brazil. As you can see from the screen here, just before I look into setup, we're actually going to get dry qualifying, but the race has mixed conditions, so it's going to be an interesting one. So I'm just looking through my setup here, just trying to decide what I want to do. I think I end up here reducing the suspension a little bit, just to make it a little bit softer going over those curbs. And then I also think just to stop hydroplaning and reduce that, when the rain does come, I do raise the front ride height a little bit. So just jumping on board here with my first qualifying lap. As you can see, I'm on the medium tires. I want to give these a try because the rain was destined to come kind of mid to late race, so I didn't think the softs would make it all the way to the rain, and I really didn't want to stop twice before the rain came, so I decided to go out on the mediums. I was pretty happy with my pace in practice on the mediums, so might as well give it a try at the start here and see what I can do. I know in short qualifying, and this is pretty standard for the rest of the league too, and I think for a lot of other leagues, but because of short qualifying and not really having the opportunity of a Q3 as you would in a full qualifying, it's pretty hard to qualify high on the grid on mediums, just because everyone usually goes out on those softs, and it makes it pretty difficult to close that delta. Just coming around the last corner here, I thought the pace was okay on the mediums. Definitely could have been a lot quicker, and as you'll be able to see a little bit later on, it really wasn't enough to keep on with the mediums for the rest of the race. So I do a 107.9, which isn't horrible, but I knew I'd probably get pushed down. Going on to my second qualifying lap here, like I said, I was going to get pushed down, and I did, to P8, so I'm out here on softs. So I'll try and go through this lap as best as I can, but braking at just after the 50, try and keep it nice and tight. And then I take it a little bit wide on the left to open up the next turn, and as you can see by the delta, my time compared to mediums, as is expected, I'm up a good amount on that. So just braking kind of at 75 meters there, turning in, using the curb on the right, but trying to keep it consistent to not get an invalidation. For this turn, I like to go down to 6, and then once the car is under control, get on the power as much as I can to open up this corner here. I found that the second sector, I'm actually pretty strong in it, and that's where I was able to make up most of my time during the race. I think this was pretty much strictly due to having a little bit higher downforce than maybe everyone else. Coming up to the kind of second to last corner here, I go purple in that second sector, and the delta is still rising, so doing my best to take the shortest line to the end of the lap, and to see what I can get here. Hopefully I can jump up. I think in the end I do a 107.3, which is okay. Again, puts me back in P5, but I think I can definitely do better. Now just going on board for the final lap of qualifying here. As you can see, just about over a minute left, so I won't really have time to get in another lap after this, so I really wanted to capitalize on this one and try and commit as much as I can. So going on to this back straight here, I'm up just slightly, just under 200ths, but I try and make that up in these next corners here by keeping it tight, getting some good exits to even that delta. So, I mean, I'm pretty much flat right now, but like I said in the last qualifying lap, this middle sector is where I really think I can make up most of my time. I get a little bit of a lock up there, but it doesn't hurt me too much. This corner here, I find that it's really easy to lose the back end, so I'm always really cautious to not get on the throttle too quickly. Here, just going flat out around this corner, trying to keep it as tight as I can. I go out a bit wide, but I get a good braking point and exit on this last corner. So again, I went purple on that second sector, and now it's just a matter of getting to the line as quick as I can. I'm up just under 2/10, so we'll see where this puts me. I think I go P4 with a 107.1, which I think this is where I finished last time, or in our last race, sorry, in Australia. So it's pretty good, but you'll be able to see here that I actually get pushed down a little bit more. Drix got a 5 position grid penalty, so that pushes me back up to P4. So just on the grid here, just before the race starts, you can see the rain is coming a little bit later. I decided to raise my wings, or my front wing, up to 5, which, looking back on it now, I honestly should have just changed my wings when I pit. I don't know why I changed it before. Like, we're going to be on dry conditions for most of the time, and I think that was just a little mental lapse on my judgment there. But as the 5 red lights go out here, we're going into turn 1. I actually get a really good start off the line, kind of just like last race, but this time I'm able to stay ahead of Isan, give him as much room on the right there to keep it on track. And then as we continue on here, we get a VSC as I think there's some collisions. Into turn 1, you can see Caminator's left the session. I don't think he retired or anything like that. I think he was just having connection issues. So after that little sequence there, I'm in P3 behind Chuckmaster and T-Balls, some really fast guys that really set the pace in this league. And for me, my strategy, similar to Australia, was really to stay as close as I can to them without getting any damage, try not to get any warnings, which I think I do a pretty good job of here. And really going forward now for the next few laps, and I think this goes on for probably until lap 6 or so, I'm really just trying to stay in the DRS. So like I said during the kind of startup of the race, I did raise my wing, so I have 0 frontline speed compared to the guys ahead of me. I checked in with T-Ball afterwards actually, and he mentioned that he was running 2.7 wings the whole time. So you'll see now and later in the race as well, when the rain kind of starts to fall, I don't really have much straight line speed, and like I'm quick in that middle sector as I usually was, but when it comes to actually getting the job done and getting the pass, I don't have that straight line speed to do so, and it just really ends up with me using up most of my ERS to keep up with the guys in front. So that was a pretty disappointing decision on my part, when I could have just had the lower wings from the start of the race, which I had practiced on most of the time, and then I could have just changed my wings when I went in for my first pit stop. But anyways, I guess continuing with this, you can see that Checkmaster actually already has a 5-second time penalty. Not sure where that would have came from. It might have been from a collision or another incident that had happened a little bit later on. But just continuing on here, we'll come back to the race a little bit later. So just skipping forward a little bit here to lap 6, not much has changed. I'm still just trying to keep up with the guys ahead. Like, the wings I have just are really prohibiting me from gaining any ground on them, and that combined with them actually just being really fast makes it really difficult to stick within their DRS. And Esand, I think, was in the same boat as them, where they had the lower wings and they were kind of just sitting behind. So he gets by me in that DRS, and you can see in my rear view there that Drix, who I think started maybe P7 or P8 because of that 5 place grid penalty, passes me as well here. So I didn't really want to lose much more time, so didn't fight them all too hard, and now it's just a matter of sticking close to them so that I can recharge my ERS and get back to a comfortable spot in this race where I'm not overusing ERS and pushing the tires harder than I should, because I do really want to try and get them to a point where I don't have to pit for anything else and just go straight onto the intermediates. As for the tires that I have on right now, I don't think the tire wear has been too bad. I'm probably sitting at 30 or 40%. So I still had a decent amount of tire wear left to work with. I just didn't really want to push or spin my tires too hard, but you can kind of see there very slightly that the rain actually was just starting. So I find that in this game that when the rain starts, it comes pretty quickly. So I knew within 2 or 3 laps we'd probably have to start switching over to the inters. And moving actually over to lap 12 here, Drix got ahead of Esand, and you can see they're kind of all bunched up there, so they're kind of slowing each other down. And in my head, I'm just trying to use this to my advantage as much as possible. I know I have that higher downforce, so this is where I can really start making some moves and potentially making up for that lost ground that I had in a straight line. So Isan makes a little bit of a mistake there, and I'm trying to capitalize, but I think better of it and just stick behind him here, because I know that we're going to have to eventually pit in the next maybe lap or two for the inters. So I just wanted to stay consistent. I've recharged my ERS back up to a point that I was comfortable with, and I'm really able to go for a move right here. So I tried to go to around the outside, give him some room on the inside, and then this is a tricky corner to leave a lot of room in. But I get the move done, and I move back up into P4. So in a good spot so far. You can see that Drix already has a 3-second time penalty, and Chuckmaster still has that 5-second time penalty. I think T-Ball as well was maybe on 3 or maybe even 6 seconds by this point. So again, similar to last race, I didn't have a warning at this point, and I was sitting pretty good for maybe even a podium if things were to stay this way. But it was still really early in the race, and I wasn't really sure of what was going to happen next or how the rain was going to play out, because it was falling, but it was very light, and trying to judge when to pit for the inters was really difficult because the conditions were steadily getting worse, and we just couldn't really judge. I was in a chat with T-Ball and my teammate Rift, and it was kind of a guessing game on when we were going to pit. And I know from, I guess, prior experience with these types of races, you usually want to pit around the time when DRS is disabled. And you can see now we're up until lap 15, so it had been raining for almost 8-9 laps, and my tires were falling off. People in front of me hadn't pit yet, but T-Ball did, and I think when we were talking over our little voice chat, he was saying that it was still a little bit too early. And you can actually see Drix, I think, pit a lap before T-Ball, and he was on mediums, and he was actually quicker. So it was still a little bit too early to pit for the inters, but at this point my tires were very high in the wear, getting to the 65, almost 70% range, and I really didn't want to risk it all that much more, and I thought it was a pretty good time to get onto the inters. So I decided to pit on lap 15 here, try and stop early enough so I don't get a penalty. And I thought this was a good strategy. I thought I went in the right time, and I think it was, looking back at it. I made up some good time, and you can see I'd come out just behind T-Ball here, so, and I think he was probably maybe a good 6 or 7 seconds ahead of me when he pit. So I got a pretty good undercut on him, and I was able to reduce that gap to 1.5 seconds. Ahead of him was Drix, and like I said, he was actually faster on those medium tires, but he was going to have to pit again probably in the next lap or two to get onto the inters, because those won't last. And I think maybe at the end of this lap, or just coming up here around this next corner, DRS is actually disabled, and like I said earlier, that's usually the time at which the game is pretty much telling you to get off slicks and get onto inters. So I think I made the right choice, and now it's just a matter of driving as careful as possible but keeping up the pace just so I can stick up with T-Ball, and as long as I did that, I could be on for a good result here. So it's been pretty much more of the same the last 3 laps here. We're on lap 19 now. I've just been following up with T-Ball, and you can see we actually come up to my teammate Rift, who's trying to get out of the way but can't really stop, and runs into T-Ball. I think Rift was actually on a set of slicks that when he tried to go onto inters, when he pit, they put slicks on, so he had 0 grip whatsoever. So I didn't lose too much time, and neither did T-Ball. I think Chuckmaster actually benefited the most from that, who's behind, as T-Ball and I both were delayed just a little bit. But it's been more of the same the past few laps. I'm just trying to keep up with T-Ball. I'm trying to really save my tires, and I think I said earlier that DRS was disabled last lap, but it was just actually disabled. So now's the time where things are really starting to pick up on the inters, and anyone on slicks now just has absolutely no chance. So not too many exciting things happened in between, I guess, lap 19 and where we are now, lap 26, except for the tires were getting pretty worn out, and at the time we didn't really think that it was going to get much worse, but the rain kept coming, and we thought we could just pit for inters and go to the end on them. So that's what we do here actually. Myself, T-Ball, and Chuckmaster behind me decide to go into the pits, as this set here of inters wouldn't last. So that's what we do. I make sure that inters are selected there, and it was a pretty unfortunate event here actually. I go into the pits, good pit stop and everything. It's the regular 2.6, but as T-Ball goes by, I get held a little bit, and Chuckmaster actually jumps me. So I was pretty pissed, to be honest, because that happened. I pretty much lost the spot, and in the rain, in these conditions, with the front wing that I have, it's difficult to pass, and going for a pass can be pretty risky. So I was kind of confused on how that had happened, but now looking back on this race footage, you can see that I was clearly held a little bit by, I guess, my pit crew, because T-Ball was going by. So not a great situation, and now Chuckmaster's actually pulled away quite a bit. So I really had to focus on just making up time here in the middle sector, and then limiting the losses on the straights. But I was pretty confident that I could get this done, and again, those time penalties that Chuckmaster and T-Ball both have were playing into my favor as well. So I just had to make sure I could keep it on the track, not get any warnings, and stay away from any potential situation where I can get damage. Moving on to lap 29 here, you can see visually that the rain is just so much worse than what it was on lap 26. And I have actually come up behind Drix, who was passed by T-Ball and Chuckmaster. So he has 9 seconds of penalty, and he actually makes a really good decision here and dives into the pits for full wets. So if I had known, I guess, when I put on the second set of inters that the rain was going to get worse, I definitely would not have pit for a second set of intermediates, and I would have just rode it out on the kind of worn pair of intermediates that I had put on in the first place. We will definitely have to go to full wets at some point here, and I think I actually go in for full wets at the end of this lap. So I guess just looking back at this race and how it kind of all played out, it's pretty crazy. We've seen pretty much every type of condition, and I find that these races are actually the funnest out of all of them. It really tests everyone's, I guess, racecraft, and kind of like I alluded to in the last video I had when we were racing in Australia, in this league, and probably it goes for in any league except for maybe esports, is having racecraft really beats over raw speed and qualifying speed, and that's what I've been trying to focus on, not only for this race and last race, but I'm going to try and go for the rest of the season, because it clearly shows that racecraft pretty much trumps everything, and sticking to, I guess, track limits and not getting warnings and being as clean as possible really makes the difference at the end of the race. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on for the rest of this race and the rest of the season. So as I go into the pits here, unfortunately these intermediates were barely used, so I guess it's one of those things that you just never know what the conditions are going to be like. But as I come out on the wets here, I kind of overestimate how slippery it is and how brand new and probably how cold these tires are. And I actually slide a little bit into the wall, but lucky for me, I don't get any damage. But I do probably lose a good 2 or 3 seconds on the guys ahead of me. So the strategy for this now is really all desperation and trying to make up that lost time. T-Ball 8 seconds of penalties, and Drix in front of me 9 seconds of penalties, and I think Chuckmaster is actually ahead of them, but he decides not to pit for full wets for the rest of the race, so the remaining 5 laps, and he's just kind of risking it, trying to get that pit stop ahead. But I think you'll be able to see in the next few laps or next section here of the race that it doesn't really pay off, because the conditions were really bad and they did require the full wet tires. on to, I guess, the end of the penultimate lap, the 35th lap here, going on to the 36th lap. So I've made up some good time to Drix, who's ahead of me, and then ahead of him is Chuckmaster, and then T-Ball is actually in first. So I think when I was on the radio, or I guess in the chat with T-Ball, he mentioned that he was actually on 11 seconds of time penalties, and I wasn't 100% sure what the gap was to him. So if I were to really push this lap and really not get into any issues or lose any time, I might be able to get the win here. So that was my goal. I knew I was getting close to him on the Delta. I think the last time it had popped up on the screen, I was at like 11.5 seconds, or really getting close to that. So I'm coming up on some lapped cars here, and as always, I think I mentioned this last time, Pogs gets out of the way nicely. And then I'm coming up to Mod Doc here. So I was kind of hoping he would be able to get out of the way. I was still a little bit far behind, so rightfully so, he didn't really have to. But as you'll kind of be able to see here on the last corner, which was pretty make or break for the win of the race, I wanted to try and get by him, but he kind of hugged that left side and didn't let me by. So I feel like I did lose a little bit of time, and you can see T-Ball won the race, and it was kind of just a matter of getting to the line as quick as possible to see where I was going to end up. And as I get to the line here, you can see 0.169 seconds, so just under 0.2 of a second, T-Ball got the win. So it was a really good race. Everyone raced hard, and we got all the conditions, so I think it was a fun one. Ended up going P2 after starting in 4th, so I'm pretty happy with that one. Next week we'll be back for another race on Sunday at Singapore, so that will be an interesting one, probably likely to get more rain there as well. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.